Have you heard the story about Ronald Reed? The janitor that had $8 million in savings when he died in 2014? Yeah, you have that right. Janitor. 8 million. And he didn't win the lottery or inherit the money either. He just saved consistently throughout his life while letting the wonders of compounding do its thing. The moral is that your behavior with money is oftentimes more important than how intelligent you are. Even if you don't have a diploma from Harvard or work on Wall Street, you can become rich by just behaving in a sound way. As the Morgan household puts it, financial success, it's not a hard science. It's a soft skill where how you behave is more important than, spend your next 10 to 15 minutes on this video. And you might excel on the soft skill of investing. This is the top 5 takeaway summary of the psychology of money by Morgan Housel. Through stock market investing takeaway. Number 1, pay the price. Let's say that you want a new, nice watch and you go to the store to check out the offerings. You are really after something that will impress your friends and the lovely lady. You're not gonna have a choice. Either you pay for the watch or you steal it and run because you have done your cardio. My guess is that you would choose the option number 1. No matter your physical capacity, you would take out your card and swipe that thing. Do the right thing. The point is that, having a new watch comes with a price of fee, and it's the same thing with investing. It comes with a price. Throughout the videos on this channel, there are some recurring takeaways for high returns. One of them being a somewhat concentrated portfolio with Peter Lynch, perhaps being the exception. The concentrated portfolio brings with it a characteristic to your performance. It will be volatile. This is the price, the fee for having high returns in the stock market. If you don't have the stomach to stay the course when your net worth decreases by say 20% during a single week as 2 of your major holdings report quarterly earnings below what analysts expected, don't aim to maximize your returns because the higher the returns, the higher this fee typically is. You invested a large portion of your net worth in. Well, they would be quite a rich person today. However, could you afford paying the price for this journey? Netflix during this period had many downturns. Would you have sat still in that boat during 2011, for example, when Netflix lost tons of customers and the stock price fell 80% from its peak? During the ensuing months, your portfolio returns would look terrible. What would you tell your spouse and your kids? Could you stomach facing them, knowing that you might have endangered their future? Would you still think that being almost all in Netflix is a good idea? This, of course, is an extreme example, but even if you have something less extreme than an all-in Netflix approach to investing, you'll have to pay the price of volatility. Nonetheless, let's say that you bought an S&P 500 index fund at 19. You'd still have to face about 13 years combined when your investment portfolio was down 20% from its high, and about 8 months when it was down 50%. That tough stock market investing is a great thing that enables wealth creation like few other options, but don't try to fool yourself. All investors will experience volatility, and you have to look at this as a price you pay for a brighter future. Takeaway number 2.
It's a very interesting phenomenon that you can hand somebody a $2 million bonus and they're fine until they find out that the person next to them got $2.1 million, and then they're sick for the next year.
Capitalism is great at doing 2 things: generating wealth and generating envy. The urge to surpass your neighbors, peers, and friends can help energize your hard work and strive to really make it. And of course, being motivated into becoming more productive and doing meaningful work is a good thing. But social comparison can also cause us to feel like we're never enough. Let's look at some studies. To belong to the top 1% highest income earners in the US, you'd have to earn somewhere around $500,000 a year. That's what a highly specialized doctor, let's call him Bill, earns. And by almost any standard, Bill would be considered rich. He can afford to drive nice cars, go on long vacations to exotic countries, perhaps hire someone to do work, which he thinks is tedious. And Bill has been feeling good about himself and what is achieved financially in his life. Well, that was only until he bought a vacation home in the Hamptons and realized that he had Stan as his neighbor. Stan belongs to the top 1% over the 1%. He is a CEO of quite a large public company and earns $10 million per year. Now you'd hope that at least Stan would be satisfied with his financial achievements, but nope. This guy was a childhood friend of Michael Jordan, and this all-time great basketball player is someone who belongs to that 1% of the 1% of the 1%. And well, compared to Michael's fortune of about $2 billion. Stan's yearly salary of $10 million suddenly seems like peanuts, does it? Well, no. It doesn't, because Michael occasionally attends parties with celebrities where a guy named Jeff Bezos shows up. Bezos is the top 1% of the 1% of the 1% of the 1%. And he increased his net worth by about $75 billion in 2020. Now sitting at something like $200 billion, there's always a bigger one. The type of envy which has emerged from comparisons of this kind has caused a lot of people to do foolish things throughout history. Some have leveraged their portfolios to the teeth in order to move up to a high pyramid, just to lose it all and then commit suicide. Some have acted on insider information and lost both personal reputation, and then later their freedom. Many have forsaken their families and then had their partners leaving them or cheating on them, both as a result, by watching this channel and learning on how to become a successful investor. John says all that you will, at some point, reach a level of financial freedom that the average Joe can only dream about. But you need to, at some point, accept that enough is enough. We will not trade something that we have a need for, something that we don't have and don't even need. Takeaway number 3. Crazy is in the eye of the beholder. At first glance, it seems like a lot of people do crazy things with their money. Some spend it in ridiculous amounts on ridiculous items, and others hide it under their mattress. But the thing to remember is that people come from different backgrounds, with different childhoods, different parents, different life experiences, and different educations. All this adds up to different perspectives and different values. What seems crazy to you might make total sense for me. Morgan uses the example of lottery tickets in the book. The lowest income households in the US spend more than $400 per year, and this is 4 times more than the average in the highest income group. Combine this with the fact that more than a third of Americans cannot come up with $400 for an emergency. Do these people spend their mode in NC buffer on lottery? Tickets seem crazy, don't they? But again, we do not have the same perspective as these individuals try to see it from there. They live paycheck to paycheck with little room to save money. They often lack education, and thus, they also lack a nice career trajectory. They can't afford a nice vacation or a new car, and they can't put their children through college without a mountain of debt. Buying a lottery ticket is their way of buying into the dream that many of us already live. That is why they buy more lottery tickets. Not so crazy after all. So how does this make you a better investor? For one thing, by acknowledging that we are different, we become less tempted to copy an investment portfolio or strategy which doesn't suit our own goals. For example, our risk profile might be higher than that of a billionaire's, as our focus is more on getting rich and not so much about staying rich. Copying the billionaire's portfolio might be suboptimal for your goals. Acknowledging differences can also help us to say no more easily to investments that are outside our own circle of competence. Take GameStop for example. As I am not a trader, I did not participate in this drama at all. It's simply not my card to play. Understanding different people's perspective, or at least there are different lenses to see the world through, will help you make better sense of our society and lead you on the path that is yours. Takeaway number 4. Peekaboo. What does the Great Depression, World War II, the financial crisis, and the COVID-19 all have in common? They were all events which shaped our society. They had huge impacts on the financial markets and they were pretty much impossible to foresee. It seems that Lab, who is one of my favorite authors, would refer to these events as black swans. The definition of a black swan is that 1. It's an outlier, nothing that has happened before. 2. Can convincingly point to even the possibility of the event to it carries an extreme impact. 3. It becomes explainable only after the fact human nature fools us into believing that we should have been able to know it would happen all along. Imagine it is Black Monday in 1987. How would you have reacted to the market losing almost 1/4 of its value in a single year? Would you have been one of the individuals that shouted sell, sell, or would you have been able to weather the storm, perhaps putting in additional chips, which have kept on the sidelines? Here's an interesting fact. If you invested in the S&P 500 index 20 years ago, but you missed out on the 4 best performing stock market days, you'd have a 164 return instead of a 291. That's quite a big difference. The moral of this takeaway is that it's more useful to prepare yourself both mentally and financially for a disaster, which you cannot foresee, than hoping that you're able to react before everyone else stops listening to macro projections. The things that will cause big fear among the investment community in the future, all the things that are unlikely to be foreseen anywhere. Takeaway number 5, the seduction of pessimism. If I were to give you a bunch of reasons to why the market will crash later this year, mentioning the gigantic US government debt, that stimulus checks may lead to the return of inflation and perhaps something about a new strain of COVID-19, you would most likely be intrigued and perhaps end up with quite a negative view of where the market cycle that we are at the moment. Instead, I will give you examples of why things probably will continue to get better by showing you how life expectancy is rising, how sustainable energies are getting cheaper, or how computing power is exploding. You would most likely shrug your shoulders and not think twice about it. We all know that the pessimistic person sounds so very intelligent and the optimistic sounds naive in comparison. Why is that? Daniel Kahneman, the author of Thinking Fast and Slow, assesses that symmetry towards loss and listening to pessimists is an evolutionary trait when directly compared or weighted against each other. Losses loom larger than gain. Organisms that treat threats as more urgent than opportunities have a better chance to survive and reproduce. We tend to listen to pessimists more carefully, not only for evolutionary reasons, but also because progress happens much slower than setbacks do. Progress rarely happens overnight, but setbacks often do because tragedies and setbacks happen during much shorter time periods. It's much easier to create an intriguing and persuading story around it, and thus it becomes more intense. To create an optimistic story about the future, we must look at the longer time horizons. This often becomes more vague and less dramatic. Knowing that you will perhaps be more fascinated by a pessimist and less so by an optimist can perhaps help you becoming less as asymmetric towards this in the future. The world is better than you think as Sweden's. So you're not going to get rich in the stock market without paying the price of volatility. Envy is the worst of the 7 deadly sins. Never risk what you have a need for, what you don't have, and don't need different perspectives, of course different courses of action to become reasonable or rational. Instead of trying to foresee disasters, prepare yourself mentally and financially so that you can survive. And be careful when taking investment advices. Understand that pessimism appeals more to your survival instincts than optimism does. That was it for today, but that was not it for the Morgan household. Check out his book, it's a real gem. Here's a suggestion on what you can watch next.